Ethan Cole stood in front of the courthouse under a gray sky that looked as tired as his heart. He had not slept all night, and his shirt collar was crooked, where he had pulled at it again and again. His hand shook as he checked his watch. He had 1 hour left before the meeting with his lawyer and the vineyard trustee. 1 hour to find a wife. It sounded impossible, but desperation has a way of making a man believe in impossible things. Ethan loved his grandfather's vineyard more than anything in the world. Sat just outside Portland, full of wide rows of green vines and a little farmhouse that smelled of old wood and fresh wine. It was his home when he had nowhere else to go. When his grandfather passed away, the will said Ethan would inherit the vineyard only if he got married before his next birthday. The old man had believed marriage would make Ethan less lonely and more responsible. Now Ethan had 1 week left until that birthday, and every woman he knew had already said no. He had a plan, a poor one maybe, but still a plan. He would go to the courthouse, find someone kind enough or desperate enough to marry him for a week, sign the papers, and then undo it all after the lawyer was gone. Promised himself he would explain everything honestly and pay well for the favor. He'd not want to trick anyone. He just needed a signature before the clock ran out. Inside the courthouse lobby, the air smelled of paper and cheap coffee. Ethan looked around at strangers waiting for licenses or forms. He saw couples holding hands, parents carrying babies, and a few tired workers who just wanted their lunch break. His throat tightened as he realized how ridiculous his idea sounded. Still, he could not give up. He walked toward the counter, hoping for a miracle. That was when he saw her. A woman stood near the passport window with a camera around her neck and a worn leather bag by her feet. She looked about 30, her brown hair tied back in a messy knot, her jeans marked with tiny stains of red dust from travel. She held her papers with calm hands, but her eyes looked restless, like someone who belonged everywhere and nowhere. Her name, as he would soon learn, was Lily Hart. Ethan almost turned away, but a wild thought pushed him forward. He walked up, cleared his throat, and said hello in a voice that barely worked. Lily looked up politely, a little puzzled. He told her his name, and then, without giving himself time to think, he said he needed to ask the strangest question of his life. She frowned in curiosity. He told her about the vineyard, about his grandfather, about the clause in the will. He told her how he had run out of time and options. He kept his words plain and honest. Finally, he asked if she would marry him for 1 week. There was silence. Then Lily let out a small laugh that was not unkind, just shocked. She thought he might be joking. When she saw that he was serious, her laugh faded, replaced by a look of wonder. Most people would have walked away, but something in Ethan's eyes made her stay. Lily was a freelance travel photographer who had been to many countries, yet she had started to feel like a shadow everywhere she went. She had no family close by, no place that felt like home. The idea of pretending to be a wife for 1 week was crazy, but her life had never been neat or predictable. She asked him sharp questions to see if he was lying. Every answer he gave was calm and true. He offered to pay her fairly and promised no harm would come to her. She looked at the ring he held out, simple silver, something his grandfather had worn. The courthouse clerk was staring by now, thinking surely these two were mad. Lily took a step back and stared out the glass doors at the cloudy sky. It was just 1 week, she thought. 1 week to help a man save his family land. 1 week to do something unexpected again. When she turned back, Ethan was watching her like someone waiting for a verdict. She nodded once. It was a small motion, but enough to change both their lives. Ethan felt his knees weaken with relief. He thanked her again and again, his voice trembling not from fear but disbelief. Lily smiled slightly, still unsure what she had just done. Together they signed the first set of papers at the counter. The clerk, trying to hide her confusion, stamped the forms and wished them good luck. As they stepped out of the courthouse into the cold air, Ethan glanced at his new wife. For the next 7 days she would share his name, his home, and his lie. He tried to speak, but Lily lifted her hand to stop him. She said softly that they should keep things simple. She would help him for 1 week, and then go back to her travels. He agreed. They stood there for a quiet moment. Cars rushed by on the street, people hurried past with umbrellas, and the wind carried the faint scent of rain. Somewhere inside both of them, something unnamed began to stir. A promise made out of desperation had just started a story neither of them could control. The drive from the courthouse to the vineyard was quiet. Ethan kept his eyes on the road while Lily watched the passing fields through the window. The gray clouds slowly broke apart, letting streaks of sunlight fall over the hills. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Silence between them was not awkward, just heavy with thoughts that neither could name. When they reached the entrance to the vineyard, the long wooden sign still carried the name of Ethan's grandfather. The land looked peaceful, covered with neat rows of vines that moved gently with the afternoon breeze. A narrow path led to a stone farmhouse surrounded by apple trees and a white fence. Lily looked at it with surprise. She had expected something smaller, maybe old and falling apart, but the place was alive and full of color. Ethan parked near the main porch and stepped out. He moved quickly, opening the door for her and helping her with her bag. His manners were careful, almost formal, as if he was afraid of doing something wrong. Lily followed him inside. The house smelled of cinnamon and oak wood. There were photographs on the wall, most of them showing people working with grapes or laughing at long wooden tables. She knew at once that it was a place built by memory, not by design. Ethan showed her to a guest room at the end of the hall. The room was bright with a window overlooking the vineyard. The bed was simple, but tidy. On the dresser sat a vase with yellow daisies. Lily placed her bag on the chair and stood by the window. Ethan cleared his throat and said dinner would be ready in an hour if she wanted to rest first. She nodded and said thank you. When he left, Lily sat on the bed and exhaled. She tried to make sense of what she had done. She had married a stranger because he looked honest, and lost at the same time. She told herself it was just 1 week. She was helping someone. Yet her heart raced each time she remembered his face at the courthouse. She shook the thought away and unpacked her camera, placing it near the window. Even here, she could not stop capturing the world through her lens. Downstairs, Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at the dinner ingredients as if they were a puzzle. He had not cooked for anyone in years. He decided to make something simple, pasta with vegetables and cheese. As he stirred the pan, he wondered what Lily thought of him. A man who begged a stranger for marriage was not exactly trustworthy. Still, he hoped she could see how honest his heart was. When Lily came down, the table was set neatly with 2 plates and candles that looked like they had not been used in a long time. Ethan felt his face warm as he realized how it looked. She smiled kindly and sat down. The first few bites passed in silence. Then, she asked about his grandfather, about how he had built the vineyard from almost nothing. Ethan told her stories of how the old man used to crush grapes with his bare hands and tell him that wine was just patience in a bottle. Lily laughed softly at that. Her laughter filled the quiet kitchen and somehow made everything seem warmer. Ethan found himself smiling without thinking about it. He asked about her work and her travels. She told him about a trip to Arizona where the desert light turned every photograph golden. He listened carefully, imagining her walking with her camera through dusty roads. They talked more as the evening went on. Each story opened another piece of who they were. Ethan discovered that Lily did not like to stay in one place for long, not because she disliked people, but because she kept searching for something she could never name. Lily learned that Ethan was not just a man desperate for land, but someone who carried deep loyalty to his family and the place that shaped him. After dinner, Ethan offered her coffee and they went outside to the porch. The sky had cleared completely, and stars spread across the dark blue like spilled salt. The vineyard glowed faintly under the moon. Lily breathed in the scent of soil and fruit. She said she could understand why he loved this place. He said he hoped she would feel welcome here for the week. For a long while they just sat there, silent again, but more comfortable than before. She noticed how his shoulders seemed to relax for the first time. He noticed how her hair caught bits of starlight each time the wind moved. Neither of them intended to feel closer, but something gentle had begun to bloom between them. When the clock struck 11, Ethan stood and said he should let her rest. He wished her good night and started toward his study, but she called him back and thanked him for dinner. He nodded, smiled, and said it was good to have someone to talk to again. When he left, Lily continued to watch the stars over the vineyard. The air felt calm, and a strange thought moved through her heart. A thought that this single week might change more than either of them could guess. The third morning of their marriage began with sunlight spilling through the curtains and the smell of baking bread. Lily woke early, feeling more rested than she had in months. For the first time since arriving at the vineyard, she felt a strange calm inside. She listened to the distant hum of leaves and the low sound of Ethan talking to someone outside. When she stepped out to the porch, she saw Ethan standing beside a tall man with sharp eyes and a well-pressed suit. The man looked out of place among the grape rows. He was holding a folder and speaking in a flat, impatient voice. Lily learned that he was Noah Gray, Ethan's business rival, and part owner of a construction firm that wanted to buy the land for luxury homes. Noah smiled in a way that was not friendly at all. He said he had heard about Ethan's sudden marriage and had come to offer congratulations. His tone made the words sound like an insult. Ethan kept his jaw tight and answered with few words. Noah then said he was having dinner in town that evening and might stop by to meet Ethan's wife properly. Lily felt an uneasy chill at his words. After Noah left, Ethan turned away from the driveway and sighed deeply. He explained to Lily that Noah had been trying to buy the vineyard for years, had already owned most of the nearby land, and would do anything to take this place too. Now that Ethan had married suddenly, Noah would be suspicious and try to find proof that the marriage was false. Lily realized how fragile everything was now. That afternoon they worked together, helping the workers pick grapes near the south field. Lily carried her camera and took pictures of the vines. She liked capturing the golden light on the grapes. The workers seemed to like her kind nature and honest smile. Ethan watched her move among them, laughing easily, and felt both admiration and fear. Admiration because she brought warmth to a place that had felt empty for so long, and fear because he already knew he would miss her when the week ended. Late in the day, a car pulled up near the field. Out stepped a tall woman in a red coat. She had dark hair and clear blue eyes that looked straight at Ethan without a word. It was Claire, his former girlfriend. She and Ethan had broken up nearly 2 years ago when she decided she wanted a life in the city, and he refused to sell the vineyard. Claire walked over and smiled, but her smile was full of questions. She said she had heard the news from Noah and came to see if it was true that Ethan had married. Lily froze, unsure what to say. Ethan took her hand gently and introduced her as his wife. For a moment, Claire's eyes turned cold, but she quickly replaced that look with polite surprise. She said she was happy for them, but her tone said the opposite. After Claire left, Lily pulled her hand back and said quietly that pretending was harder when people who knew him came around. Ethan apologized. He said he knew this week would not be easy, but he had not expected so many memories to return all at once. Lily looked at him and saw that his eyes carried not pride but pain. She realized then that he was fighting for more than land. He was fighting for a piece of his past, and maybe even for his future. That night, thunder rolled over the hills and rain began to fall hard. They both stood at the window watching the storm sweep through the vines. The wind howled against the walls of the farmhouse. Suddenly, Ethan went outside without saying a word. Lily waited for a while, then followed. She found him standing among the vines, soaked and still. Water flowed over his hair and shoulders. He looked like a man who was trying to hold back a lifetime of loss. She walked slowly to his side and asked why he was standing there. He said that storms like this reminded him of his grandfather, a man who believed that everything, even pain, watered the roots of life. Ethan said his father had nearly ruined the vineyard years ago by selling part of it to pay debts, and Ethan had spent his youth trying to fix those mistakes. Losing the land now would mean failing again. Lily listened in silence. She did not try to comfort him with words. She simply stood near him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The rain softened around them, and the night grew quiet. After a while, he turned to her and said softly that he was sorry for dragging her into this mess. She answered that she was not sorry. She said sometimes people meet for short moments, but those moments can still mean something. He looked at her, rain dripping from his hair, and for the first time their eyes met without fear or duty. They walked back to the house together, shivering but calm. Inside, they sat by the small fire to dry. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt honest, neither spoke of love or promises. They simply shared warmth as the storm faded away outside. In the quiet flicker of the fire, both of them began to sense the truth that their 1 week would not pass as easily as they had planned. The 6th day arrived with a clear blue sky and a light wind that moved softly through the vines. The storm was gone, but its memory stayed in the quiet look in Ethan's eyes. He spent the morning checking the barrels and the cellars while Lily walked through the fields taking photographs of the workers in the sunrise. She liked the way the sunlight rested on the grapes and turned them into small sparks of gold. For a moment, everything felt peaceful, but peace never stayed long in Ethan's world. In the afternoon, Noah returned, this time with the estate lawyer, Mr. Harlan. He had heard that the final review of the inheritance would happen the next day. He greeted Ethan with a wide smile that did not match his words. He said he only came to wish happiness to the new couple, but his tone carried hidden meaning. Lily tried to stay calm, but her stomach twisted. Mr. Harlan asked if he could speak privately with Ethan about the final papers. Ethan sent Lily to the kitchen to prepare tea, knowing that Mr. Harlan might ask questions that could expose their plan. She went inside, but could still hear bits of their voices. Noah was telling the lawyer that he suspected Ethan's marriage was nothing more than a trick to keep the vineyard. Mr. Harlan said he trusted Ethan's honesty, but would still need to see proof that the couple shared a true home together. There had to be signs of real marriage, not just papers. When they left, Ethan sat down heavily at the table. Lily brought him tea and waited for him to speak. He said that the lawyer wanted to visit again in the morning to confirm everything. But if he had even a little doubt, the estate would go to the next relative and Ethan would lose everything. Lily could see how hard he was fighting to keep his voice steady. She asked what they needed to do. He said they would have to act like a real couple when the lawyer returned. They needed to show closeness. That word hung strangely between them. The rest of the day moved slowly. They practiced answers to possible questions, how they met, what they liked about each other, small things that made a marriage believable. Yet during those rehearsals, something changed. Each time Ethan answered, his words sounded less like lies and more like truths that had slept inside him for a long time. He said he liked how she could find beauty even in ordinary things. She said she liked how he talked to the vines as if they were old friends. By evening, the sun was setting behind the far hill. Ethan decided to cook dinner himself again. Lily helped with the table and poured wine that he had made the year before his grandfather passed away. The taste was rich and deep. As they ate, he thanked her for coming into his life, even if it had been by accident. She looked down and whispered that it did not feel like an accident anymore. Her voice was quiet but full of feeling. When dinner ended, Ethan brought out an old box from his study. Inside were photos and letters from his childhood. He told her stories about the days when he used to run between the vines, how his grandmother would sing while hanging laundry behind the house. Lily listened softly, her heart tightening. She had traveled across the world taking pictures of people's lives but had rarely been part of one. Now she was sitting beside a man who loved his land more than anything, yet was brave enough to let someone else enter his world. Later she went to her room to pack her bag. The week was almost over and she knew she should be ready to leave after the lawyer's visit. She looked around the little room that had started to feel familiar and felt sadness rising in her chest. She found an envelope on the desk with her train ticket back to Seattle. She placed it in her bag and wrote a short note to Ethan thanking him for trusting her. She did not sign it at first because her hand would not move. Downstairs, Ethan noticed her light still on. He walked to her door and knocked softly. She opened it, looking startled, as if caught doing something secret. He asked if she was ready for tomorrow. She nodded and tried to smile. Then he saw the bag near the bed and the ticket sticking out from the pocket. Something inside him cracked. He asked if she had already decided to leave right after the meeting. She said yes, because that was the plan. His face changed and the calm he always carried fell away. He told her that he did not want her to leave yet. He said he had begun to care for her far beyond what he had expected. She looked frightened, not of him, but of what she also felt. She said it was not fair to mix real emotions with something that began as a deal. He said sometimes real things grow from strange beginnings. For a long time they stood there facing each other, the quiet between them full of unspoken questions. Ethan finally said in a rough voice that he did not need her to pretend anymore. He just wanted her to stay. She looked at him with tears starting to form. She said she was afraid she would not have the strength to leave if she stayed one more day. He took a step closer, but did not touch her. He whispered that maybe they both needed to be brave in a different way now. That night, neither of them slept much. The house was still, and the vineyard silent under the pale light of the moon. Each of them lay awake thinking about the morning to come, about truth, courage, and the strange thing that had grown between them, without plan or permission. Morning arrived soft and bright over the vineyard. The air smelled of wet soil and grapes warming in the sun. Ethan was already downstairs when Lily came down, her hair still damp from an early shower. She carried her camera bag on one shoulder and tried to smile, but her eyes gave away the storm of feelings waiting behind her calm face. The lawyer, Mr. Harlan, arrived just after breakfast. He stepped out of his black car carrying a folder in his usual polite expression. He greeted them both and said he would need to look over a few final details before signing off on the papers. Ethan offered coffee while Lily stood behind him, trying to look composed, though her heart beat fast. Mr. Harlan asked quiet but direct questions. He wanted to see how well they knew each other. He asked where they first met, what Lily's favorite color was, what brand of tea Ethan drank every morning. They answered carefully, each helping the other when needed. Yet something about their voices held something real now, not rehearsed. The lawyer noticed that and paused more than once, as if unsure whether to believe so much ease between two people who had met only days ago. After walking through the house and the vineyard, he said he had seen enough. He sat in the study to sign the last document, transferring the vineyard officially to Ethan. Noah's name was on his lips once, as he mentioned that the rival would not be pleased, but he said the estate was now secure. Ethan thanked him with quiet respect. When the lawyer drove away, silence followed, wide and heavy. Ethan stood on the porch, staring out at the rows of vines stretching toward the hills. He had done it. It saved the land. The vineyard would now stay in the family just as his grandfather wished, but victory felt strange, less like joy and more like a question he could not answer. Lily came outside, still holding her small bag. Her week was finished. She said softly that she should go to the station before the last train. He turned toward her, and the look in his eyes stopped her speech. He said thank you first, because words of gratitude were safer than the ones truly waiting in his chest. She said it had been an experience she would never forget. He asked if she had everything she needed. She nodded. Still neither of them moved. The sound of the wind filled the space between them. He wanted to tell her that he had never felt so alive as he had this past week. Wanted to tell him that leaving felt like breaking something gentle inside her. Yet both stayed silent. When she finally walked to the car, Ethan followed. He opened the door for her, but could not bring himself to step back. He said her name once, slow and low, as if the act of saying it hurt and healed him at the same time. She looked up at him, her eyes bright under the warm light. She told him he did not need her anymore, that the vineyard was safe. He replied that maybe it was the vineyard that had needed saving, but maybe he had been the one given a second chance. She smiled sadly and said that he would do fine without her. He shook his head. He said he was fine before she came, but fine was a lonely word. Fine had no laughter at dinner, no voice calling across the porch, no camera clicking behind him while he worked. She felt tears pressing behind her eyes. She turned her face away and started the car. The engine rumbled and the tires rolled over the gravel road. Ethan stood still, watching until the car turned onto the main road and disappeared behind the trees. The field breeze moved through the vines again, and the quiet of loss settled deep in him. He walked back toward the house slowly, every step heavy. Inside the kitchen, the empty chair where she used to sit waited like a quiet reminder. An hour later, he went out to the vineyard again. The workers were loading the last batch of grapes for the season. Ethan moved among them, giving small orders, but his heart was far away. When he passed the porch, he noticed something on the bench. It was a small brown envelope. Inside was a folded note that said only 2 words, one more. Beneath the note was a train ticket torn neatly down the center. Ethan looked up toward the hill. From the road above, a familiar figure was walking back through the vines, her camera swinging by her side. The wind pushed through the leaves and carried the smell of earth and fruit between them. He walked toward her without hurry, his smile forming before he reached her. When she stopped in front of him, neither spoke. There was no contract now, no plan. Only the quiet truth that both knew without saying. The field stretched wide around them under the clear sky, full of promise and new beginnings. In the months that followed, the vineyard became known for a new label on its bottles. The name of the wine was written in simple letters, 7 days. Visitors who asked about the story behind the name were told only that it came from a week no one would ever forget. For Ethan and Lily, it would forever be the week that began as a lie and ended as the truest thing they had ever known.